Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of your favorite podcast. We apologize for being late for a bit. We just had some technical issues, so we will just have to be flexible and adjust to certain situations that just happened. I hope you guys had a really blessed 4th of July with your families. And for tonight, Shaun and I have prepared some of the new paranormal true eyewitness reports that our friends from the Singular Fortean Society have decided to share with us. So we have their authority, and I thank them for that. And I also have included the link for their website. And I just would invite all of you guys to go support their work. You can buy some of their books. You can just read their stories, and just in that way, support someone's research when it comes to these supernatural stuff. We picked some of the most interesting stories we found for today, but we certainly hope to continue some other time because this website has tons of very interesting eyewitness reports. And again, I'm so thankful to the owners of that site, Tobias and his wife Emily, for allowing us to read their stories. For tonight, we have prepared the first story. Will be dealing with the winged humanoid near Caneville, Illinois. And since I'm in Chicago, this makes sense to start with this story. I'll just share the screen so we can read more easily when it comes to this. And as usual, questions are welcome, comments are welcome, especially if they come from with kindness. And Shaun and I will try to give biblical worldview and just to analyze all these reports when it comes to by giving Christian background. That being said, I'll just share my screen. And Shaun, is everything okay on your side? You can see?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
All right. So I'll start off here. The Singular Fortean Society was contacted last Monday by Matt Sexton, 33, who said he'd encountered a winged humanoid while driving to work early that morning in northern Illinois. Prior to the events of Monday, Sexton said that he had seen the creature twice in 2023. I've had 3 different encounters that started around the same time last year in April or May, he told investigator Tobias Wayland in a phone interview. Both of his prior encounters took place in the early morning hours, sometime between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m.
Shaun, I just want to ask you: don't you find it funny in a way that all of these stories that we've been reading, and we read in the last year or so, dozens of these stories? Isn't it funny how sometimes you can see the devil in the details? How he's so repetitive. It's always the same time.
Always the same time, and it's interesting. With this particular account, he says that it happened 3 times. So you have, especially a lot of times when you see something demonic, it'll have recurrences of the number 3, and investigators sometimes posit that maybe this is to like attack the Trinity, like this is a slight against the Trinity. A lot of times in poltergeist scenarios, you'll have somebody who has marks on their body, and it'll always be scratches, and it'll always be 3. And so, I've heard it said by different investigators that they believe that that is a slight against the Trinity, like mocking the Trinity.
Thanks for that.
The first time Sexton said he saw the creature was on US Highway 30 near a town called Hinckley in Illinois. I was driving my truck at the time because I'm a semi driver, so I kind of do later night runs, he said. And going down that road, I saw a huge branch fall off of a tree and kind of like hit the road a little way ahead of me. So I looked up, and there was this maybe 12-foot creature. I'm not sure really how to describe it other than it was covered in like a mouse brown short hair fur. It didn't look leathery. This creature, he said, was humanoid. It had legs and arms separate from wings, and it came down and went right in front of my truck. It was kind of like when those eagles fall and they unfurl their wings at the last minute and fly off. Sexton said, that's what it did. At first,
Shaun, just want to ask you, what do you think about these measurements when it comes to the 12 foot? I don't think we ever covered a story where a wing, a humanoid creature with wings, usually Mothman or Thunderbird or something similar to that nature, would show up to be so huge. Usually we see reports of 6, 7, sometimes maybe even 8 foot, but that's it, but not 12 feet. So I mean, can you imagine yourself driving a truck and seeing an entity that is as big as your truck?
no, I absolutely I
You
couldn't
can't.
imagine that. Um, well,
Good.
partly because I'm not Canadian, so I don't really see moose very often when driving down the highway. I'm sure some of our
Yeah.
Canadian friends can understand what it's like to look out and see something as big as your truck, um, but especially not humanoid. And one of the reasons that we don't expect that to happen is I believe it's called the square cube rule, where if something doubles in height, in order for it to stay proportional, it actually has to quadruple in weight. And so, if you were to have a human or a humanoid creature that was 12 foot tall, so double the height of an average 6 foot tall male, an average 6 foot tall male weighs about 200 pounds if he's fit, you would have to multiply that by 4 times. So, this is an 800-pound creature that is winged and flies. That violates every rule of physics that we could think would come into play here.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine how that looks like. I was about to say that's like a flying car, even though, of course, cars are way heavier than just 800 pounds. But
Yeah,
this would be like a flying boar.
like a flying
Yeah.
grizzly bear.
Okay, sounds fun. Okay, let me set up. Okay.
Okay. At first, the startled truck driver wondered if maybe he had seen, or if maybe what he had seen was simply a large bird, but that explanation didn't exactly seem to fit. It freaked me out, but I was like, there has to be something I'm missing here, he explained, and then I just kind of dismissed it. It became more difficult to dismiss when he saw the same thing only 3 weeks later, this time on I 39 off of US Highway 30, just 10 miles or so from his first sighting. Again, it went real low in front of my truck, Sexton said. It was the same sort of creature, and I got a better look at it this time. He described the creature as having a sort of webbing between its legs, almost like a flying squirrel or a wingsuit. Its feet had 3 big claws in front and a talon in the back, and its face had an elongated snout. Wow, I'm just picturing 3 long claws in the front and a talon in the back. That reminds me of like owl claws. How owls grab
Mm.
onto to branches. They have that hind digit that is able to grab onto the branches. Um, and the detail about him having webbing in between his limbs, like a wingsuit or like a flying squirrel. And I think that's really the only way that mammals, because of our bone density, have been able to fly, is by using that those folds of skin. Even thinking about a bat, they use those leathery, basically a webbing between their limbs and their main body in order to be able to fly. Now this guy says that it wasn't leathery. I'm not sure how a furry wing is supposed to help you fly, but yeah, it seems like this is a contradiction here. That this is a furry creature with a short mouse brown, soft fur. I'm thinking of a very soft, fuzzy, kind of like gerbil fur. And with wings, you really have one or two options. You have the flat skin of a bat that catches the air, or you have the long feathers of a bird that directs the air. But what neither of them have is the friction that comes with really short hair, because that would not allow you to fly. That's not aerodynamic at all. So yeah,
Yeah,
all
and
of his.
it also helps your case of, when you mention a bat, or I'm thinking maybe a fox or something like that, because birds, including owls, don't have a snout. So this is like a some like a combo that we may be seeing in different mythologies. You had, a head of this animal, a tail of this animal, wings of this animal. It's almost reminds me of those mythological tales.
Yeah, yeah, like a chimera.
Mm, yeah.
All right. The closest thing I can think of is a gerbil snout or face, Sexton said. It was elongated like that. The creature's wings were membranous and appeared to be separate from its arms, he added. Sexton estimated that the creature to be at least 10 feet tall based on its size relative to nearby reference points.
Okay, now he shrank the creature for 2 feet. That's funny.
Yeah, he shrank it 2 feet, and now he says that the wings were membranous, which fits better with what we understand with like bats' anatomy, that they have membranous, leathery wings.
I was about to make a joke and say, well, maybe it's 10 feet because it's cold outside. Maybe it was January or February. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I was able to get a real good gauge of its size because I saw the fog line on the right hand side of the road and the middle line of the highway, and its feet crossed the fog line and its head was touching the middle line. So it had to be at least 10 feet, he said. The being's wingspan was similarly huge, Sexton said, estimating it to be between 20 and 25 feet. Just as before, the winged humanoid swooped down and then flew back up before disappearing into the darkness.
So the flying boar or the flying grizzly keeps changing its height and weight.
Keeps changing its height and its weight. And I would be interested to see the wingspan, because a 25 foot wingspan, I mean, obviously that's huge, right? But compared to creatures that have wingspan, I think like an albatross or something like that, something that's just ridiculously large wingspan, has like a 12
Mm,
or 15 wingspan. And it's not an 800-pound animal. So something like that, 20 or 25 feet may be huge, but still, I mean, biologically speaking, this thing wouldn't be able to get airborne.
yeah.
Let's see. Again, Sexton tried to rationalize his experience, thinking, maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm not seeing right. He wondered if he had simply seen an owl or even just garbage blowing in the wind. 12-foot garbage, bro. I don't know. I'm a garbage man. I've never seen garbage that I would confuse as a 12-foot humanoid.
I don't know what kind of plastic bag is 25 foot long, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Maybe a contractor bag, but that's not a humanoid. I don't know how you got
Oh
a
my God.
fuzzy man out of that. I kind of went through everything it could have been, he said, and I just kind of wrote it off because as much as I'm open to paranormal and cryptid things, I'm a fairly skeptical person.
Not for
Okay.
too long.
Yeah. But then he saw it again a year later. Sexton's third encounter took place on McGear Road, about 3 or 4 miles west of Caneville at approximately 2:15 a.m. As he drove his truck onto a small bridge spanning a creek, the creature suddenly appeared. I don't know if it came out from under the bridge, Sexton said. It just swooped down real close, almost touching the windshield. And that made me swerve because the creature took up so much of the windshield and it was so huge. I swerved into the oncoming lane, hit the gravel, and got my composure back. After that, I was wondering what the heck was going on. Uh, just still going. It came down again from the right side to the left over my hood, buzzing over my hood. And and then it was 30, 40 yards to the left and up in the sky.
Man, this thing moves so swiftly, and I think everyone can see a bump into his car. It's not so bad. This is his left side of the truck. so it's not that bad. But yeah, we can see some, light damage. Okay,
That's
this is
not grizzly
the
bear damage. I mean, I'm gonna be honest.
yeah,
That's
it's
not grizzly.
and it's yeah, it's definitely not. Yes.
My bumper was pushed out, like I may have clipped it the first time that it went under, or that it went under over my hood on the right hand side when it first appeared, Sexton said. The winged humanoid appeared to Sexton as a well defined black silhouette. When it flew, the sky was cloudy, and the lights of nearby Sugar Grove helped illuminate the area just enough to see it silhouetted against the cloud cover. At that point, I started to speed up, and now I hit the gas, just trying to get away from whatever it was. And it went over the roof of my truck and then back over the hood again. And it was keeping up with me. I was going about 110 miles an hour, just trying to get as far away as possible. Dude,
Sean,
110
I think
miles.
that I just think that the creature wanted to have fun. Maybe it was just playing chickens. Maybe it was just harmless trying to race with the guy. Maybe.
110 miles an hour. I think that Batman got Flash's superpower because he was going ridiculously fast for a flying grizzly bear.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. That's when Sexton went for his Taurus 9mm pistol that he had with him. At this point, I've got too many good looks at the creature. Okay, so he knows at this point it's not garbage.
It's not a plastic bag flying in the air. It's not.
It's not a contractor bag. I don't know what it is. It's not like anything I've ever seen before, and I'm genuinely fearing for my life. It kept coming down at my vehicle, and when I saw it was keeping up with me, I started blasting. He said Sexton was in fight or flight mode and thought, if it's a bird and I've overreacted and I killed a bird, then I can deal with it. But if it's something that I need to defend myself from, I'll do what I have to. Death to garbage. Oh man. Honestly,
This
I'd
guy,
rather not
I
lose my
love his
life.
honesty. I love that he's just being so honest with himself and ourselves to the point where we can believe him, but still laugh to the point of not mocking him, but just enjoying the story and just laughing at all these details.
Oh yeah. No, it's good. And obviously he's being honest because these are details that I wouldn't share if I were to make up a story, right?
Yeah, he's like, I'm
Like,
about to grab my pistol, and if it's a bird, who cares? And I'm like, dude,
who
what if
cares?
someone from like this, like, is it called PETA or like those animal rescue,
Oh yeah,
organizations are watching, like reading your story? Like, I don't care, just kill a bird.
that's right. Yeah, it was a California condor, rare and endangered. I started blasting.
And when they ask him, well, how big it was 12 foot. They're like, are you nuts? That's the biggest one in the world. You killed the last one. And he was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
Honestly, I'd rather not lose my life or possibly get into a really bad accident over whatever the heck this thing wants to do. I'm not really proud of that necessarily. I'm not like super happy about it, but that's the level of seriousness that it was. I like to think of myself as somewhat level-headed person, not someone who would start firing at a shadow or a garbage bag coming out of the
I
woods or
think I
what.
think he's now adding all these details in case if this goes to the police to become a police report and he has to go to the court, he's now justifying that he's mentally fine.
Yeah. He doesn't just shoot at random things, right? He identified it first. It's Batman, just not that Batman. All right. It was genuinely terrifying. It was genuinely something large and completely unseen before that was coming down at my vehicle. He fired 7 or 8 rounds at the winged being, but doesn't know if he actually hit it. So
From that
he could
distance.
also.
And come on, I mean, this was like if it's really 12 foot and so close to you, and you're not damaging, like you're not hurting, you're not doing anything to this entity. I would just pay attention to the road and just, you know, just get the heck out of that. Like try to take care of your safety and the truck, and just go away. But the question is how possible it is to leave the scene and to even get lost from this entity, if the entity can keep track with the speed even when he's speeding up, and if this entity has something to do with this person because it keeps following him and appearing to this truck driver for the third time. And we don't know, because this story didn't just pop out today. It's been a few months ago. Maybe this creature will continue showing up to this person. So it's like, you at some point you have to ask yourself, how far can I go? How far can I run and hide? Is there a time and a place in my life where I have to stood up to this person or to this entity? And if the answer is yes, then the next question will be, well, how?
Yeah. Well, and he also needs to apply to be a stormtrooper, because if you can fire 7 or 8 rounds and not hit anything, that's definitely some stormtrooper stuff right there. All right. It wrapped itself into its wings and started to descend. I followed it down, firing, and it was gone after that. I haven't seen it since. Bro.
Oh my gosh, how many rounds did this guy shot at this entity? Doesn't say, but this sounds like he shot so many times. I wonder how come. I mean, of course, this was like a remote area, but like how possible it is that no one informed the cops, that no one heard anything, no one reported someone blasting like into something
Right.
on like on the road. Because like, I mean, if he's a truck driver, he's not going to like some deserted places. He has to go to some places where there are so many other cars. Like, where the other eyewitnesses? I'm just like a little bit confused, you know.
I mean, you would think that somebody would report a semi truck going 110 miles an hour down a highway, shooting out the window, like that. That is something I
But
would
is
report.
mentally stable. It's mentally stable. They attest that he's mentally stable, just being bad at shooting. So that happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the creature once again disappeared into the darkness.
Okay, we can see the hood here. Okay, doesn't look too bad, not damaged. Okay.
No. There was an indentation on my truck, like something was dropped onto the roof, Sexton said. I
Let me go
still
and
go by.
see. Oh, yeah, we don't see the roof here. Too bad. Okay.
No, no. I still go by the same places, Sexton added. I try to keep an open ear for any weird sounds or anything, and I'm trying to figure out or even process what it was that I saw and what it was that I went through and ultimately had to defend myself from. The identity of what exactly Sexton encountered remains a mystery.
Mhm.
He described the being as seeming to be a biological entity, not exhibiting the glowing red eyes or other potentially paranormal qualities sometimes described in winged humanoid encounters. However, in what could be seen as one of the synchronicities thought to follow these sightings, Sexton mentioned that he had installed a dash cam in the semi truck he had been driving during his first 2 encounters, only to have the sighting stop after he did so. Furthermore, the dash cam he had installed in his personal vehicle, the truck he had been driving last Monday, had malfunctioned and been removed just 2 weeks prior to the most recent experience. I don't
Okay,
really
I'm sorry. I just want to say something shortly. I remember when I interviewed what was his name, Doug Overmyers, in 2 episodes last summer when we were talking about his ministry and dealing with people who had demonic manifestation in their house or the land which they bought, different, just people dealing with different traumas, and which usually attract demonic entities, people being possessed and all these things. And I remember when he said that things that we see in horror movies, like technology would suddenly stop working, he will tell me how that happens, like things that perfectly can work, like your tablet that was working, but then it suddenly stopped before we were supposed to go live. one of those things happen when you're dealing with the paranormal, and to this day we don't know how, but these spiritual entities can have influence on your technology and mess it up, which doesn't mean that every time that something in the church or in any ministry setting that something goes off, it's a demonic attack. Of course not. But I'm just saying that this just confirms when people would report. I also watched like a YouTube story of this Native American guy who would record his I forgot, was it with a Vendigo or something like that. He would report story, and the guy who was using the camera to record him, he said, man, I just put new batteries in my camcorder, and they just ran out immediately. And the Native American guy is laughing. He said, yeah, that's happened when you're dealing with all these demonic entities. So I just
Mhm.
want to say that even though we're laughing, having just good time, it's not that I don't believe Sexton. So the truck driver, I do believe him, even though he's even not sure what he saw. But when he says in this specific detail that the dash cam had malfunction, I just want to say that this is not just something that we see in horror movies. This is something that we repeatedly hear and see with people who are dealing with the supernatural. And I don't know if you wanted to add something on that.
Yeah, I actually think that the fact that we find this stuff so humorous really speaks to the fact that nobody would make up a story like this, right? Like nobody's going to make up a story that it just sounds so hilarious, right? Like I didn't know if it was a floating garbage bag. You wouldn't you wouldn't make that up. You're just going to communicate that if that's true. Like I'm trying to disprove what these things are, or at least to try to understand what this is that I'm seeing. So he's going through the process of what this is. So yeah, I think the fact that we're cutting up a little bit about what he's saying, it's not in any way to dismiss his account, but really just to show that yeah, this isn't something anybody would make up. He's just reporting what happened.
Yeah.
He says, I don't really dismiss any of this just offhandedly, Sexton said, of any potential paranormal hypothesis. I'm super skeptical and need to see a lot of evidence, but I absolutely don't just cast any of the paranormal stuff aside. Who knows, right? Besides, he noted, thinking about a biological entity, I don't think something that big with that kind of wingspan and humanoid build would naturally evolve or would even really be able to fly like it does in the first place. Okay, so he's tracking on the same thing we were talking about. It
Mm.
should be noted that Sexton was also interviewed by Lon Strickler of Phantoms and Monsters, during which he recounted events similarly with no embellishment. All right,
That's
so
a
he
good
has a
sign. So he's
yeah,
he's sticking to the same story.
he's into his story. Because of its proximity to other sighting locations, the creature described in the above report could be related to the larger Lake Michigan Mothman phenomenon. These sightings
Hmm.
are commonly reported within a few 100-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. The sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported as more people become aware of the phenomenon. They generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near park or natural areas and around water. Witnesses consistently describe a large gray, brown, or black bat or bird like creature, sometimes with glowing or reflective red, yellow, or orange eyes, and a humanoid feature such as an upright, bipedal posture are often reported. Some witnesses have reported feeling intense fear and an aura of evil emanating from the creature they encountered. Many of
I
the
just want to
sightings,
say this reminds me of the Mothman Prophecies movie with Richard Gere. When you see that, well, you don't actually see that creature, but when you hear him talking and flying above you, that's what you get. You get this intense fear that Sexton is reporting. So, I mean, thankfully, I didn't experience that, and I don't want to, but I can only imagine how scary that would be. We can now laugh, right? We're safe in our homes. It's still daytime, but the poor guy was alone, which still blows my mind because he was probably on a highway. Eventually, you have to see someone or even a gas station for three times. No one else to back up the story or to come to help or to call cops saying someone is shooting, which is another story. But I'm just saying that even though we are laughing now, I can only, feel bad for the guy going through this. This can cause some serious nightmares for him and even PTSD in the future.
Well, and one thing I was thinking as I was reading this story is just one state removed from Illinois is the state I live in, Iowa, and we have a phenomenon called the Van Meter visitor, which occurred in the early 1900s and might be the first modern recording of the Mothman phenomenon. That you had this winged humanoid creature that was seen by hundreds of people, and they even saw the underground mine entrance that it went into. And so, whatever this is, it's happening in not only that area, but also, as far west as Iowa.
See, as our neighbor state, we're exporting all these cryptids to Iowa, so you're welcome.
Well, technically, we had it first, so we might be sending it to you. We just haven't had it since.
Oh my gosh, take it back, take it back. We have enough insanity here in Chicago.
Many of the sightings are also of something seen only briefly or are described only as a flying creature with a few details, which leaves open the possibility that a misidentified large bird, such as a heron or a crane, or some type of anomalous avian species could explain some, although certainly not all, of the encounters. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These include reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures, and mysterious humanoids, parapsychological phenomena, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings.
Okay, I think we're done because this is just how to contact the page if you have to report the story. I'll just click for the next one. Next one is reports from the void, and this is the quotation from the, I guess, eyewitness. It says, "I too have had an experience with these orbs." Wow. Okay. Whenever I hear about the flying orbs, I'm thinking about the shape-shifting skinwalker wrench, right?
Skinwalker.
Yeah.
Okay. I also would think connecting those two, the psychological phenomenon that occurs with the humanoids and anyone investigating that's also reported at Skinwalker Ranch. That anyone who investigates it has this psychological phenomena where they have this disorder. I think in that Travel Channel documentary thing that they're doing at Skinwalker Ranch, or that maybe it just ended. There was actually one of the people there who ended up getting like brain damage because of the effects of the psychological stuff going on there. And in one of the episodes, he actually had to go back to the doctor and have I don't know if it was a CAT scan or an MRI, but to have imaging done of his brain to make sure that wasn't coming back.
Poor guy. Oh my gosh. I hope he'll be okay, honestly. Because in this case, you're not looking for trouble. You may be a scientist, you may be a doctor, you may be a miner, you can be a farmer, or you may be just going even there to research, which doesn't mean you want to hurt this entity. I don't even know if you can hurt it. But let's say, you're not trying to do anything bad. Maybe you're just curious, trying to investigate, and you come back with your brain getting tumor or cancer or something. So that's scary and that's sad. So I hope the guy gets healed. And by the way, if you guys hear any blasting sounds, coming from my end, it's because there are still some people in the area celebrating 4th of July. There's not much I can do because we have to read the stories. So I hope it won't be too noisy. Okay. Reports from the Void is a repository to share those stories for which we do not have enough information to make a full report. This is usually because of little or no communication from the witness following their initial submission. The Singular Fortean Society will also provide as much information as possible regarding any correspondence during our attempts to speak with those involved. Okay. The Singular Fortean Society received the following email with a message I too have had an experience with these orbs. Mine was what I thought was a dream, but maybe not. In the subject line on July 26, 2023. I was sleeping, but then was in a field in a nearby town. This was a large marshy area with electrical towers. This orb was an intelligent being and was talking with me via telepathy. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that someone finally says that these orbs are not just some, you know, mindless flying machines. So this thing has intellect, and because it has intellect, it's not a thing, it's an entity, it's a person, it's a being that has mind. So we see from the very beginning that it's not just nothing, it's not just flying, it's not a drone. Like a drone doesn't have personality, that it's dead. But this thing is not just a gadget, so this thing is personal.
Yeah, I think that we take the idea of an orb as an artifact that you find on like camera footage, and we take
Mhm.
that and we superimpose that onto an orb that you see, with your own vision. But so the artifact of like the camera lens of the film, it could be like dust or a bug, or it could be other things. The light reflecting off of the camera, moisture in the air can produce that. And so I think we're so used to just like dismissing it as, oh, it's just this, that
Mm.
when we hear about stories of orbs, we just try to find a natural reason for the phenomenon, instead of like, oh, dude, there's this condensed ball of light moving around that's obviously sentient.
Yeah, and it's seems to be following people, and that's doesn't, if it, god forbid, if that will happen to me, it wouldn't make me like happy, or this is like my angel, like angel guardian or something like that. No, it's not like that. I don't think I will have peace knowing that this thing is just flying around me and following me. So this is from the get-go. I think this is already a red flag, but we'll see. So this orb was talking with him via telepathy. I too had the experience of them telling me that I was not alone in this world. We discussed religion. Okay, this is very interesting. I already love this story because it has spiritual aspects closer to us to dissect from biblical perspective. I'm a Christian and spoke to this orb. It was a glowing orange yellow color, and we spoke about my belief in Jesus. I told it the entire story of Jesus, and it wept when it learned of the crucifixion. I knew that I couldn't tell anyone about this encounter as I felt protective of this thing. As we spoke, it was getting close to sunrise. I woke up then. Investigator Tobias Wayland, and again, he's the guy who allowed us to read the stories from his website. Thank you, Tobias, and please, support his work. So Tobias replied with a request to interview the witness for more information, but received an automated response saying that the email address provided could not be found. It is unclear exactly what other encounters the witness is referencing in their submission, although they could be referring to North Carolina man Christopher Bledsoe, 62, who last year recounted a series of encounters with seemingly intelligent, glowing orbs that he claimed to be able to summon using prayer. Before we switch to Bledsoe, Shaun, I'm actually sad that this story is so short. I thought the whole article will be about this Christian who spoke to the orb. I have never, ever, ever, ever heard, nor I would ever expect that in this case there can be actually a flying orb. I don't know if it's trying to camouflage and portray itself as being neutral and look, I have emotions. I'm crying that Jesus is crucified. But this is a very unusual story because in cases of flying orbs, there will be entities that will follow people who already witnessed something supernatural. So these flying orbs, I'm not an expert at this, but in a way, they almost sound like like when you have a war and before you go attack someone, first you have a scout, right? At least this was back in the days before satellites, before nuclear energy, before electricity, before anything. You send a scout to investigate enemy's territory, right? So usually in the Skinwalker Ranch, if an orb would be following someone who survived, the Skinwalker Ranch and all the supernatural and paranormal, accounts, this orb will be following the person, and I don't think it will make the person happy. Maybe even on the contrary, maybe the person will be highly upset, worried, stressed, sad, scared, etc. But in this case, this orb, we don't know if it's just faking or not, but it's showing emotions that Jesus was crucified and it was actually said. So in that way, this Christian took it upon himself not to spread the story because he felt protective over this thing, which reminds me as if you would find like a squirrel or a cat or a baby deer, and you don't want to give it to other people to hurt it or kill it. You just protect it and nourish it, take it home until it grows big, and then you release it into the wilderness. So how do you see this account with this Christian person?
Well, I think that you're thinking about it in the right way. It's you're thinking, or this person is thinking about this orb, this being that manifests itself as an orb, as something that needs to be protected, like a possession that needs to be guarded. And I think that the irony is that this is something demonic that has it is not that thing which is possessed. It is actually viewing the person as something that it could possess, and is the fact that it is emotionally manipulating it is something that we see often at the very beginning of demonic encounters. So a demonic encounter hardly ever starts off as the terror that normally gets the church involved. Normally, when we hear about demonic encounters, how they start off is almost either presenting itself as a child or as a woman, because it's something that you want to protect because they're playing on the instinct of man, that our instinct is to protect these beings, and so we have this sense of obligation for them. And I think that's what this orb is doing with this person, is manifesting itself in such a way as to um, really to try to exploit the good intentions of this person, and by doing so, not only really prevent this person from telling the story, which wasn't, I don't think, was really what the being wanted, but to solidify this idea that you're special because I came to you, uh, and that is, I think that's really what was happening there.
Yeah, for me, that's suspicious as well as speaking via telepathy. Why did you pick that way? Because we know that um, throughout the human history, Satan and his fallen ones, they will come up to people in dreams, visions, including telepathy, ascended masters, which we covered in the last two Sundays when we spoke with different New Age people, well, former New Agers, current Christians, praise God for that. And when we try to expose these entities, they're basically all demonic, and they would choose to talk to people sometimes in this way through telepathy or dreams or visions, giving you revelation. So, this is for me, I mean, we're given only a small paragraph. We don't have more information. I'm honestly sad for that. I'm sad that this Christian did not respond to Tobias in email. We don't know how the story continued or maybe ended, so we can only speculate. But since the get-go, I didn't like this idea. But I mean, I cannot be sure 100% because even angels can communicate with people in that way. So we simply cannot know. We are only speculating.
And I would like to clarify that when I say demonic, I'm not necessarily saying that I understand what the origins of this thing are. So I'm not like saying the theological classification of demon, just experientially what this thing the type of maleficent or malicious encounter that you could expect from something like that would fall under what we would call demonic, not necessarily saying that the thing it would ontologically belong to a class of demons.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. Thank you for that. Um, okay, so now we're continuing with Christopher Bledsoe. Although his experiences with the glowing orbs began on a fishing trip in 2007, Bledsoe said that he and his family were shunned and ridiculed when he first tried to tell their story to the community. So he kept it a secret until 2012, when he was visited by a comforting being who told him he was not alone. Okay, so these beings keep coming to people who, in a way, are lacking something emotionally, so they come to comfort them. And if not, they're sent by God. I hate to be the guy to say, well, then who do you think sent them? But we are pretty close to come to deciphering what this entity is, right? Um, the being took the form of a beautiful glowing woman floating 3 feet off the ground. Shaun, would you agree that this is an immediate red flag?
Yeah, yeah. The woman in white trope. Yeah, it never ends well.
Yeah. The next thing will be like, take me, do these things for me, touch me. Am I not beautiful? I'll take care of you. All these things is usually what we see in all these stories, and including movies, I have to say. But I mean, a lot of movies still have portions of truth that, they're either coming from urban legends or people telling their own eyewitness reports. And of course, the producers exaggerate and put many more details in the movies. But I think that even horror movies entail some of the truthful elements.
Mm-hmm.
So a woman was glowing with a white dress, the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. Bledsoe said. She looked at me and said, "You know I'm here. If you do this, I will always be with you and help you. I will help you with witnesses." Okay, I'm confused. I have to be, but I'll keep reading. I'll help you with witnesses. Since 2007, Bledsoe said, the orbs have appeared over his home every night, and he claims to have captured over 2,000 videos of them doing so over the past few years. So these entities, they want to help the poor guy by showing them as themselves as support and witnesses. So that once when he records them and broadcasts this into the onto social media, that people will see that he's not crazy. That's basically what's happening. So while Bledsoe's experience may seem unique, other witnesses have came forward with similar stories. And unfortunately, all of these stories are short, so this is where his story ends. I don't know if you would like to add something before I continue.
Just the idea of, if you do something for me, I will send you my witnesses. Seems like an inversion of Jesus, who says, I did something for you, now go and be my witnesses. It seems like this is some sort of demonic inversion of that idea.
But even worse than that, if I may dare to add, because many times in the Bible, God doesn't even expect from you anything, just to obey for your own good and the good of the people around you, especially if you were a prophet, right? So God wouldn't like, oh, I'll do a favor if you do me a favor. Like, no, God doesn't need favors from you. And this entity is like, oh, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. It's almost like, it's like, it's not the way that God and angels work most of the time. I'm not saying they cannot, but um the way that he got help was suspicious, at least when it comes to my opinion. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is another story. The last year, a witness reported psychic contact with a series of spherical objects to the Singular Fortean Society. Meanwhile, a man in Indiana near the Prairie Creek Reservoir spoke to investigator Tobias Wayland about a series of glowing orb sightings that span from 1981 to 2020, which could be related to winged humanoid sightings in the area. Okay, so this is getting more complex because as we see that these entities, any of these entities we're covering on the channel in the last 15, 16 months, they don't have to come isolated. So why is it that with Bigfoot, there is almost always like something happening when it comes to UFO and aliens? Or in this case, why is there Mothman and flying orbs? Like why there's sometimes a multitude of different beings connected? I don't know the answer, but it's as if they're all working together, but just looking differently or choosing to shape themselves and portray themselves differently to humans. Working together, having different jobs, different tasks. Maybe some are scouts, some are troopers, some are warriors, some are guardians. We don't know. Again, we can only speculate. But it's so interesting to see how the picture is getting more and more complex. How these different entities that you would usually not think that they're connected, that they would come in the same story, they actually can come together and they're not fighting each other, which
Mm.
I think is another red flag. And I don't know if you would agree.
I absolutely would agree. I think the reason that we see these connections is because these phenomena are connected. And I think that one of the reasons that we see them manifesting in different ways, like you said, is because if you want to catch a variety of fish, you've got to use a variety of bait. And so not one phenomena is going to appeal to all people, but as long as you can keep people out there, keep them on a wild goose chase, trying to find an entity that they believe is physical, that they believe they have evidence for, then they're not going to ponder the big questions like what is the meaning of life and what happens when I die, and what is sin and what did God do for me.
Hey, that's a good point, because not maybe, most of us would not like to see a dog man, right? But then when you
Mm,
think about a fairy, you're like, oh, that's so cute, it's so little, it's so sweet. Maybe it will help me, maybe it will bless me, maybe it will bring me good luck. So people, including kids, would be open to these entities, right?
mhm.
But they wouldn't be open to something scary, not knowing that I don't think there's a good fairy. So by opening yourself to these entities, they're just camouflaging and manifesting themselves as the beings of light. You're actually opening yourself to something dark and sinister. I have never heard about a good fairy, except in fairy tales. I don't know about you, Sean.
Nope. Disney created the good fairy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. In 2022, the Singular Fortean Society was contacted by Shane Taylor, 44, who wished to report an encounter with a multitude of seemingly friendly orange orbs he had on Christmas Eve of 2014. It was really bizarre. There was a dreamlike quality to the experience. Oh, this is all deja vu, Sean. This is the same thing like the first guy, the Christian one in the story. He was having this kind of vision where the entity was speaking to him through telepathy. So this is very similar. This is like copy paste. So there was a dreamlike quality to the experience, but I was still conscious and aware. It was really wild. Taylor said of his encounter during an interview with Wayland, when I got out of the car and they were right there, it was almost like they were attracted to me. Like they picked up on me and were like, here's us, here's what we are. I would just avoid the word like, because this doesn't seem to be a coincidence. I
Right.
don't think they pick you by coincidence or because they like you. I think that, of course, I'm not God, so I don't know, but you could be a target without you knowing.
Hmm.
To me, it was friendly, like a friendly interaction. I know it's so weird to say interaction, but to me, it felt that way. To report your own encounter with impossible, reach out to us directly. Okay. Oh, okay. This was the end of the article. So basically, three or four very short stories, and all of them combining flying orbs, and all of them, unfortunately, without the ending. I hope one day we'll read continuation of these stories, because this was published in February 3rd of this year. So who knows? Maybe by the end of this year or next year, maybe we'll find out what was happening furthermore in these people's stories. Sean, do you want to read about the Thunderbird in Oklahoma?
That works for me. I'm excited
I
about
know, man.
Thunderbirds.
I'm actually jealous because this is the story I wanted to read, but that's okay. God loves you more today. Just today. Just today.
Just today, the Singular Fortean Society received the following report on an unusually large bird via an email entitled Thunderbird sighting earlier this year. The witness asked that he be identified only as Jason B. So 2007 to 2009, somewhere in there, I was working for an oil field company, Chaparral Energy, out of Weatherford, Oklahoma. One of the first job sites I was sent to was laying about 3 miles of polyethylene pipe about 45 minutes southeast of Ponca City, Oklahoma, near the Osage National Reservation. I was on a backhoe pulling what had to be a quarter mile of pipe slowly behind, stopping when a joint needed welded together, and so on. At one of the stops, I stepped out of the cabin to have a cigarette and noticed something casting a gigantic shadow as I looked down to shield the flame from the wind. I know bald eagles are one of the largest birds in North America, and I also know they range pretty much the entire continent. I also know at this time I had never seen one in the wild. What I also know is this bird was definitely larger than a bald eagle. The entire body was roughly the color of the bald eagle's head, so a grayish white, or more like a harpy eagle. It was maybe 50 to 100 feet from the ground, and the wingspan at that distance made me realize how massive this bird was. Looking directly at it from my fixed point, I would estimate the span from this distance to be 8 to 12 inches. It wasn't long after that I believed it decided the backhoe wasn't prey, and it flew into the woods, lowering its altitude as it went. The last time I remember seeing it, I would. Can you go back up for a second? Looking directly at it from my, I would estimate the span from that distance to be 8 to 12 inches. I think he meant feet, because 8 to 12 inches of wingspan is not that impressive. I'm sorry,
No,
that
it's
was just
not.
bugging me as I was reading. I was like, I'm imagining a sparrow, honestly, from 100 feet. Think, I mean,
Like,
that is
I'm
not a
scared a
thunder.
sparrow visited me.
Yeah, yeah. I would be more impressed that he could see that from 100 feet.
Yeah, because a
Uh,
sparrow would not throw a shadow bigger than a human. So you're completely
no.
right. So this is 8 to 12 feet. Correct.
Yeah, it's going to be 8 to 12 feet, not 8 to 12 inches. All right.
Good catch.
The last time I remember seeing it, I could visibly see the treetops moving and bending away from the wind created by its wing flaps. In further correspondence with the investigator Tobias Wayland, Jason clarified certain points and provided additional information regarding his experience. Jason said that he was in his late 20s at the time of his sighting, which took place during springtime between February and March. He described the temperature as being in the low 80s during the day and dropping into the 50s at night. It was a clear and sunny day. It was quite warm. I wasn't in even a light jacket that day, he said. If there were any clouds, I don't remember seeing them at all. The estimated wingspan given in the initial email was the relative size from his perspective, but Jason estimated the actual wingspan of the bird to be closer to between 14 and 16 feet. Bald
I'm sorry,
eagles,
but Jason keeps changing. Like the first guy who was riding his driving his truck in Illinois, who went from like eight
well,
feet to like 10 and 12, and this guy keep changing as well.
yeah, 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 and especially if he's going from inches to feet, that's a big jump. Uh,
But yeah, yeah, like the creature was 12 inches. Oh, I'm sorry, it was 16 feet. Like, okay,
that's a little bit of a difference.
no difference. Yeah, okay.
Bald eagles can reach wingspans of up to 8 feet, and harpy eagles, which are not native to the area, have wingspans of just over 7 feet. The most vivid detail I remember was the coloration. It was a lot lighter in color than most of the large birds I had seen growing up, or that I had seen. Growing up in the South, I had seen various hawks, buzzards, and even a peregrine falcon or two, but the coloration was more like a harpy eagle, very little brown, but a lot of different shades of gray, he said. The second thing that stuck out with me was when I got close to the tree line, you could see the treetops bend under the wind caused by the wing flaps, but it wasn't a windy day. In total,
Sean, just a
Jason.
second.
Mm,
I'm sorry, but when I'm while I'm listening to you reading these things and I'm just putting my imagination out there, I'm thinking about the Lord of the Rings and those huge eagles that were like so gigantic, right? They could, well, you know, hobbits were not big, but they could still, you could still put probably a few humans on their back and they will still, without any problem be able to transport them to another part,
mhm.
of the Middle Earth. But the thing is, as you're reading this, I'm just imagining something huge like those eagles from the Lord of the Rings. If they would just flap their wings, the whole tree will well, it wouldn't collapse, but it will move because it will be like almost like a strong wind blowing. So when he describes this thing, how the tree moves because of this entity, it reminds me of something really, really huge. I mean, it has to be so powerful because the power or the force of those wings while they're flapping and causing air to like vibrate and these air currents, to influence all the trees to move and bend down. I mean, we're talking about something powerful.
Yeah, well, and to that point, um, a a bird will generate with its wing flaps a an amount of wind force, amount of downforce proportionate to the size of the bird, to the weight of the bird. So you don't want something
Mm.
like the sparrow that we talked about earlier, generating 100 pounds of lift per square inch of his wings, because then he's gonna be taken off with Elon Musk's rocket ship, out into space. Um, but so something that's going to generate that much force to bend the trees, this is going to be something that's pretty hefty. So it's not going to be something the size of an average bald eagle.
Mm.
All right, let's see here. In total, Jason estimated that his sighting lasted 10 or 15 minutes before the enormous bird dropped too low behind the tree line and he lost sight of it. The Thunderbird is a popular legend among a wide variety of indigenous cultures across North America, including the Algonquin, Iroquois, Siouan, and Arikara peoples. Although regional variants differ, the Thunderbird is often described as an enormous bird, sometimes credited with supernatural abilities, such as creating thunder from the flapping of its wings and lightning crashes from its eyes. In cryptozoology, the word has been appropriated to describe any bird of unusual size.
Okay, Sean, you probably know this better than me. I used to think that Thunderbird is a synonym for Mothman, but now when you finish reading this last paragraph, it doesn't seem like. I mean, in some instances, yes, but not exactly, because it says such as creating thunder from the flapping of its wings and lightning flashing from its eyes. So this seems to be another species.
Yeah, so I was thinking that a Thunderbird is actually probably closer to something like, are you familiar with The Rock? The It's a ROC. It's a mythological bird. I think it's from Middle Eastern or Greek mythology, and it's this
Yeah, I know
giant bird.
about it. I know about it only through some fantasy video games, to be honest.
Right, right. So it's a giant bird that's like capable of picking up like a whale or something like that and carrying it off. So I think like the original folklore of a thunderbird was much closer to something like that. And so what's even interesting about that is if they are connected, you have this spanning continents, that you have this idea of this ginormous bird that was obviously a threat to people and a symbol of power and strength and the ferocity of nature, um, that that was just ridiculously big. And so yeah, we have that. I know we have that in Europe and in the Middle East as the Rock, and then in North America they have it as the Thunderbird.
Okay, so I have another question. If you know, reading at least this eyewitness report, it doesn't seem scary. Whenever we read something about the Mothman, it's way more sinister. It's way more scary. People are running away. I mean, this entity is following them. It's glowing. It has glowing red eyes, right? All these things that are like make you have nightmares. But with Thunderbird, unless I'm wrong, but at least based on this account, right? I cannot generalize, but it doesn't seem to be scary except that it is huge. It doesn't seem like, oh, it's seeking to devour people or hurt them. Do you know of stories from other legends or eyewitness reports where Thunderbird actually is hunting people, hurting people, or it's in that is in any way as scary as Mothman?
I have heard a modern encounter of Thunderbird that was just a really big, like 5 to 7 foot tall bird that had probably a 20-foot wingspan and had targeted a young woman. She was with her friends and had pinned her to the ground and started devouring her. And it took 3 or 4 people to get it off of her. And when the authorities came, they were able to obviously um, get get the lady patched up. But yeah, when the authorities were notified that it was this giant bird, they had said that they had those kinds of complaints before.
Okay, so what crosses my mind, if this is just a mere animal without any supernatural abilities, well, of course here it's mentioned thunder and lightning, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if it's mostly an animal, or just an animal, then can you blame it for like I mean, of course we don't want to attack anyone and hurt, but I mean, if it's just the rule of nature to feed itself in order to provide for itself food and to continue living, then it doesn't mean it's evil by attacking this or that animal or this or that human. Of course, even though we don't want anyone to get hurt, but I'm just saying, I'm trying to be neutral in this case by trying to understand if it attacks. So if it's really that huge, it won't satisfy itself with a rabbit or something small. So it needs a big prey, and big prey were the biggest or one of the biggest ones, right? So if in that case it attacks humans, let's say to devour them to feed itself, it may not be because of mere hatred like demonic entities do. It's not because to intimidate us or torture us. It could be maybe just to feed itself and then it's done. It's not to torture people. I'm just trying to be, like I said, neutral and try to understand. Could it be that it's just trying to feed itself, and it's if it has a nest with little birds and whatever? I mean, could it be just that it's just doing what the nature does?
Very well could be. One of the things that I'm thinking as you're describing this is you have this creature that descends from the sky, attacks people or livestock in order to consume it, and then leaves. If you were to see this thing, it would be feathered or scaled. It would be quite large. I'm thinking dragon, right? Like if you're somebody who wasn't really super familiar with the taxonomy of creatures, you might look at that thing and say that's a dragon. Uh, it's a giant uh, winged creature that descends from the sky and brings damage. And if you don't give it food, if you don't provide it food, it will come looking for food.
Hmm. Except that it doesn't have scales, and body's not a reptilian one, but everything else would resemble like a flying dragon, if I can put it that
Well, I
way.
mean, if you were to look at the legs of something like an eagle, or even look at like an ostrich, where its legs are, it would look
Mm-hmm.
scary. Where it's, if you think of a chicken leg, right, with that skin that it has, it's got that rough textured skin. You would be
Mm-hmm.
forgiven for thinking it was scaled.
Mm, I see. Yeah, and I forgot in which folklore or mythology they had kind of reptilian mythological beast that they had feathers, and I
Hmm.
think it was. Aztecs or Mayans who had this. It was like a flying dragon-like creature that didn't have just scales, but it had feathers on top of it. So again,
I,
we could be just talking about like a species that came from mixing different species or a totally unique animal. I don't know.
there's actually a bird in North American um, North American lore. It's actually the painting is in Illinois, so not far from where you live, of a creature called the Piasa bird. And this is a
Mm.
bird with scales and wings, and it's from the monument is in Alton, Illinois, and it was a bird that was said to be to live on the Mississippi River and hunt both sides of the Mississippi River. And then there's a story about the defeat of this Piasa bird in Native American lore.
Cool. Let me see what is the next thing I want to read. Ooh, a flying gargoyle. Okay, let me just unplug my laptop for a second because it's charged. So before we go with the next story. Okay. So reports from the void, another one coming from this subsection called the void. This thing moved like a person. Okay, not very scary, but of course this is an AI photo. It's not real. Let me skip this because it's not really important to the story. Okay. Lon Strickler of Phantoms and Monsters, so another website that deals with the supernatural accounts. He recently received the following email from a witness who said they saw a pale, emaciated. I don't know how you pronounce this.
Emaciate.
Okay, thanks. Humanoid creature one night during the early fall of 2019 in Rockford, Illinois. Okay, we're dealing with another part of Illinois. I don't know what's happening tonight. I didn't plan, but okay. This occurred about 5 years ago. I'm 20 now. My mother is a veterinarian, and we have a clinic at the edge of Rockford, Illinois. It's a big town, roughly 150,000 people. However, when I say the edge of town, I mean cornfields for 30 miles plus to the west and 5 miles to the north with intermittent forestry in that area. I went with my mother to check on an overnight dog that was recovering from extensive treatment. However, there was a small pug which was 9 to 15 pounds that was also there overnight, so I offered to take the dog out to do his business and save my mom one more chore. The back of the clinic faces a grass covered pond slash marsh. It dries up from time to time, but the grass is there to 4 feet tall. I don't remember if it was late winter, early spring, or even early fall, but no snow and the grass was tall. So my guess was early fall. The front of the clinic is next to a road and other commercial buildings. However, the back of the building, like I said, is very undeveloped. I like how he puts all these seemingly uninteresting and unimportant details, but this is like a good police report. You will put not only what you think it's important, but as to prove that you're not lying or twisting something. All these details sounds like someone who is very skilled in writing stories as a professional book author, because you're putting all these details as when you close your eyes and you listen to these details, you can imagine yourself being there. So even that the area or the building was not developed, even that I think it's important because it brings to the credibility of the whole story. And Sean says he agrees. Okay, amen.
I
uh,
agree. Yeah.
yeah. There were some leftover cookies in the clinic, so I, being a kid, grabbed one and munched on it as I waited for the pug to do his thing. I'm not super fond of sweets, so I get halfway through the cookie and decide I've had enough. I remember the night having a vaguely eerie feeling. And that's good because this segment of our podcast is called Eerie Encounters. So that's perfect.
Perfect.
There were floodlights on the back of the clinic, though not so good lighting, and I didn't see anything and brush it off as another Midwestern night of feeling creepy. Okay, so before I moved here, no one told me that Midwest is creepy, but now this guy tells me after me being for 15 years in the country that Midwest is creepy. Okay, that's cool. So he says it's not uncommon. If you're from the Midwest, I'm sure you can agree, but it was quite more so than normal. Okay, so it was more quiet than normal. The pond is full of sounds, frogs, and insects most of the time, but like I said, it wasn't summer or spring, so I brushed that off as well. I had lost interest in my cookie. The guy can just write another story based of the cookie. I think he's so good with all these details. So he had lost interest in a cookie and decided that he would throw it into the grass for small creatures to have a good snack. Man, he's such a good guy. He takes care of animals.
Yeah, you
So I launched
contrast
this half
with
cookie.
human.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I should contrast
So
that with the humanoid guy who is just
yeah,
blasting at nature.
yeah. He's opposite, right? He's
Yeah,
just shooting randomly, and this guy, oh, like I'm gonna feed this insects with my cookie. All right. So I launched this half cookie into the grass, maybe 15 yards away. I don't have a great arm, and it's only half a cookie, so nothing super far away. I think I'm going to remember this story just based on cookie. That's it. It lands in a taller thicket of grass towards the east and from the west. I hear and see something roughly the size of a deer or person take off as soon as my cookie lands heading straight for it. I'm well versed in local wildlife and I know how deer move. But this thing moved like a person, except it was as pale as paper and had no fur at all. This was me during COVID. I barely left my apartment, so I was pale. And since I love sugar, I think it could be someone like me. I can still see its spine pushing against its skin. No arch like you can get with a quadrupedal animal pulling with its front legs. Instead, like an ape or person hunched. Its spine never straightened, like it was hunched over running in an unhuman way on two legs. Oh my gosh. Um, Shaun, I'm thinking about Smeagol. You know how he's trying to walk, he's never completely straight, he's always hunched down, right?
I was just gonna say this doesn't sound like a gargoyle. This sounds like the rake, which
Oh
is
wow.
that the pale bony creature that reminds us of Smeagol.
Mm, yeah. So all I saw was the shiny semi-reflective skin of its back, about 2 feet of it stopping at where the neck or shoulders would have started. Man, or it's one of those stories where people would see a creature that is not fully formed, so it's like in the shape of shapeshift. I mean, it's in the process of shapeshifting or morphing, and you bump into the process when it's still not finished. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but it's like this entity doesn't seem to be fully formed. It's like something is messed up with the entity.
Mm-hmm.
um it's stopping it where the neck or shoulders would have started, and it had no large shoulder blades like a deer or dog or any other similar animal. Instead, it had a narrow chest like a sidehound or deer, but bipedal with ball and socket shoulders. Not to mention, deer don't run to things you throw in the grass. They're skittish. The second that cooking landed, both me and the dog stopped cold. I have never been frozen by fear, but if I was then, and we just watched it for 2 to 5 seconds as it ran from one end to the grass to my cookie where it disappeared, and I heard it run away from me after getting or investigating the cookie. Once I couldn't hear it anymore, I immediately decided I was going back inside. The dog, however, was fixed, and it took a small tug of the leash to convince, but that it was okay. And if you know small dogs, they are obnoxious and overly brave, barking at everything they don't know. This is true. That's why I like big dogs.
Mhm.
But this dog never made a peep, and as soon as it realized it wanted to leave, was in complete agreement. I'm not one for the paranormal or religion, but this was something I could never explain. I know deer, and this thing was no albino hairless deer. It was something else, with its emaciated body and pale white skin. I still remember that night in perfect detail. It still raises the hair on my neck. Strickler told the Singular Fortean Society that he had not communicated with the witness further following the initial report. Despite the lack of communication, investigator Tobias Wayland did locate a veterinary clinic on Rockford's western edge that could have been the site of the reported encounter. That location will not be named in this article to protect the privacy of those involved. As noted by Strickler when he first published the report, this is the latest example of an anomalous humanoid being reported in an area from which reports of winged humanoids have been received as part of the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation. So far, there have been 7 such quote unquote Mothman encounters in Rockford. Man, there's something about this area. In
Mhm.
1999, a woman said that she, along with her husband and a girlfriend, witnessed a flying red eye gargoyle. Okay, so even if the first one was not the so called gargoyle, this one coming from 25 years ago is supposedly gargoyle. And it's
Mhm.
red eye, which is so funny because most people swear that Mothman, whom they witnessed, supposedly has red eyes. Okay. So
Mhm.
they witnessed a flying red-eyed gargoyle. But in 2004, a witness reportedly saw an all-black man with huge bat-like wings. In 2010, two separate witnessed came forward. I think this is witnesses. I think it's a typo. Came forward to describe their encounters with a totally black big thing with big wings and a flying tar man respectively, of course. In 2006, Jonathan Lane reported an encounter with giant shapeless black thing with 2 very large red eyes. In 2017, a woman reported that she saw a winged human-like being, and all of these are basically separate articles that you guys can read on your own. And in 2022, Shayna Clippard said that she and her mother had seen both a massive black winged humanoid and a glowing UFO on the same night. So again, this is all in Rockford, Illinois. All these 7 Mothman encounters, which is way too much for a city that is only 150,000 population. But it's not about a city. I guess it has to do with the area. Um, Among the breadth of Lake Michigan Mothman investigation reports, areas that include winged humanoids sightings have also hosted a variety of encounters with seemingly flightless entities. In Chicagoland, a woman said that she may have seen a mysterious humanoid creature while bicycling with her friend in the Cook County Forest Preserve on the afternoon on December 8, 2019. A couple said they saw a large, thin man appear out of Schiller Woods with what almost looked like a praying mantis eyes, just jet black. And on December 23rd, 2019, a woman said that she saw a very tall, skinny, all black figure, about 7 to 8 feet tall, shuffling towards her while walking her roommate's dog in the Albany Park neighborhood on January 9, 2020. A man said that he encountered a humanoid spider. A humanoid spider. Oh, this is new, Shaun. This is cool. I mean, it wouldn't be cool to see it in person if it's a 6 foot big spider. Again, I'm just thinking about one of those big spiders in Lord of the Rings. Well, they're bigger than just 6 foot, but I mean, I'm just keeping thinking about Lord of the Rings lore. So a humanoid spider, Shaun. I know this is out of blue, but what would you do if you're just coming home, parking your car, about to enter the house, and let's say 20 feet from you there is a 6 foot humanoid spider? What would you do? Would you be running home?
Fire.
Would you
Kill
be
it with
fighting? Would you yelling?
Yeah, no, it's dying. It's dying. That cannot be allowed to exist. I don't care if it's sentient. It cannot be allowed to exist.
But okay, but look, you're walking home. You have no weapon. Let's say your door is like 50 feet away, so you cannot run that fast because this entity is like 15 or 20 feet away from you, and it's 6 foot tall. Of course, it's in all its legs. How many legs it has? Six or eight, right? Spiders. So
Yeah.
it's coming at you. You have no weapon. Would you be running, or would you be like stop in the name of Jesus, like, or maybe a combo of those things?
Probably a combo of those things, and I would use the sword of the spirit until I got the Glock of the glockiness, and then it would die.
You know what? I would probably yell and rebuke it in the name of Jesus, and if it doesn't work, I'll be running like heck, and probably if I would see people, I would be yelling at them to go hide, and I would just try because I don't know how fast this thing can run. I mean, spiders are in general they're fast, so I was just trying to enter a building or a house nearby that is open or something like that. And I mean, as if people are already not afraid of spiders, but imagine if you would see one that is 6 foot tall or big. I think that's enough to bring you nightmares until you die.
But so here's the thing: you would look for a building, but spiders build their nests in buildings. What makes you think you're not just running into its nest?
That's a good point. I guess I wouldn't be even thinking about it. I would just hope that there are only people and nothing else in that building, And I
Ugh.
hoping that spider cannot, just break the entrance doors. I don't know.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, yeah, but you just have to get fire, I guess.
That's
Without
it.
relying on
Fire.
Promethean, you will have to rely on a good source of fire. Okay, this is almost done. Um, so this humanoid spider had eyes like human-like and had reddish glow, which was in Evanston, Illinois. This is not that far from the city. In the spring of 2020. Oh my gosh, this was not that long ago. And the man reportedly said that he saw an egg-shaped object fly over O'Hare International Airport and shine like a brilliant blue light to the ground, through which a person appeared to be taken aboard the craft on January 23rd, 2020. Oh my gosh, this is insane. I came to a very cryptid infected city and state. So yeah, but that's why we have all these cool stories, right? That egg-shaped UFO was reportedly seen over Rest Haven Cemetery, a little known cemetery within the boundaries of O'Hare. I have no desire to go and visit this cemetery. Also at O'Hare Airport, a trucker, maybe that's the trucker from the first story who came from Rockford, Illinois to Chicago. Maybe that's the same guy. Let's see. Let's find out. So a trucker, it doesn't have that he had a gun, but he probably had a gun in his truck because he was followed around by the Mothman, right? It doesn't say that, but I'm just reading between the lines. So this trucker reportedly said that he had encountered a diminutive, gray-skinned, black-eyed humanoid while picking up air freight on the night of July 31st, 2020. It doesn't say that he was shooting like crazy, but maybe he hit a detail. And the last story or the last detail in this story is that in September of 2022, a woman said that she had seen a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish white color in Chicago's Groveland Park neighborhood. There is something about Indiana, and that's basically the end of this story. Um, Shaun, when it comes to the first part, I don't know if you remember when the guy was throwing cookie. I'll never forget the cookie part. It was just, I mean, honestly, it was just a little bit scary because this entity, this being came, took the cookie and disappeared so fast. Again, it's almost like Smeagol. That's so it can be uh maybe offensive or evil or attacking, but it wasn't there for that. It was just hungry, minding his own or its own business and disappearing. um do you think that in cryptozoology, or whenever we're dealing with these cryptid stories, do you think that we can ever come to the part where we don't know, simply we have no clue how to dissect certain entity, so we cannot necessarily put it in the good or evil category? It's more nuanced than that, so we can put it in neutral. For me, this may be very close to being neutral, at least to what we know.
I think you got to take it on a case by case basis. So I think that anytime that you say like, "Hey, I've got this approach that I approach every encounter with, and I'm just going to immediately classify it as this," um, I think that you're going to be frustrated by a lot of people's encounters because it's like you said, it's more nuanced than that. But I think it is interesting that you definitely do have some encounters that fall very squarely within demonic, right? Like we would gladly say, "Hey, what you encountered there was a demon." Um, but then there's other encounters like what you said with the cookie, or there's weird encounters that people have with cryptids like Bigfoot and stuff like that, that they report this it's seemingly innocuous experience with this creature. And so and it behaves and acts like a biological creature, like it's responding to biological imperatives, like to eat. um, and
Mm.
so with that, you can't just clearly say, "Oh, well, it was a demon," or "It took the cookie in a form of deception in order to deceive this person into thinking that." No,
Yeah.
that's not the encounter. That's to eisegete your interpretation onto the encounter. So yeah, I think that you have different things that are going on, and it's a lot more complex than we understand. But we at least know that there is a classification of the demonic, and we have to be careful with that. And for these things that we don't know, we just don't know, um, we should be cautious. And I think that there's a temptation for people, even people who've experienced these things, to say, "I know what is going on here. Like I have the key bit of information," but there's none of those fit every single encounter. So I think we always
Mm.
kind of just have to be humble, and say, "Man, I don't know," and just call balls and strikes as we see them.
I think this creature definitely belongs in the cookie creature, and that's probably the first and the only one. So I don't
Yeah,
know if it's neutral or not, but it definitely likes cookies. So,
it likes cook.
and demons don't like cookies, so it could be benevolent. I don't know. I'm hoping so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean, do you want to do the honor of reading the last story? I left Loch Ness as the last story for you.
Oh yeah, awesome. And I love Nessie, so this will be awesome. A series of recently released images taken several years ago at Loch Ness are the most compelling surface images of the Loch Ness monster phenomenon seen to date, according to one researcher. The photographs were taken on August 13th, 2018, by Chai Kelly,
Kelly.
uh, 52, who was visiting Scotland's Loch Ness with her husband, Scott, 69, and daughter. Kelly was reportedly taking photos at Doris Beach when she and her husband saw that what they described as a strange creature moving from right to left in the loch, covering a distance of roughly 100 meters.
Ooh, okay, let us see. Ah, this is disappointingly barely showing anything. It's almost like a head of a
It
crocodile or something.
looks like a hippo to me.
Okay. Okay, there are more images people can see on the webpage. Again,
Mm.
I have enlisted the Singular Fortean Society webpage in our video description, so you can go and check it out. Um, yeah, okay. The these are the photos, and yeah, this is the rest of the text for you.
Well, and just to point out, If it was a hippo, that would be probably a bigger story than seeing a monster in Loch Ness, because to get a hippo from Africa to Scotland, from
I was
the
just about to say I don't think there are hippos in Scotland, but I didn't
there are
say.
not. There are not, and I don't think it ever gets warm enough in Scotland to be able to have a hippo there. All right. My husband was originally from the Inverness area, and Doris Beach is a very special place to me, as it is where he used to take me when we first met, she said. We had lunch in the Doris Inn and then started walking around. I was just taking pictures with my Canon camera of Scott and our daughter Alyssa, who was then 5, when about 200 meters from the shore, moving right to left at a steady speed, was this creature. Okay. It was spinning and rolling at times. We never saw a head or a neck. After a couple minutes, it just disappeared and we never saw it again, she explained. She said that the creature was making strange movements on the surface, but made no sound. The water was dark, but they could see shapes below the surface, she added. At first, she wondered if what they were seeing was an otter or a pair of otters or even a seal, but she said, we never saw a head and it never came up for air. So whatever we saw, it wasn't a head. I was thinking that was the head of a hippo, but she's saying that was not the head. So that's even more interesting.
Yeah, God knows what was that. To me, honestly, it just looked like an alligator or a croc. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll keep reading.
I could not accurately assess its length, but the two parts that were visible were less than 2 meters long together, she said. Fearing ridicule, she at first declined to share the photos, but was inspired to do so after hearing about the surface watch organized last August by independent volunteer research organization Loch Ness Exploration, which was the largest investigation of its kind in 50 years. She then decided to share her evidence with veteran researcher Steve Feltham, who has himself set a record for the longest vigil in search of Loch Ness. Feltham has over 30 years of looking for the elusive beast under his belt. She shared 15 of the images in 2023, releasing the rest, a total of 71, this year. They are the most compelling surface images of the phenomenon. Putting all 71 frames out there will hopefully spark international debate and an analysis. That's the point of it, Feltham said. They still defy explanation. I don't think they are otters. Those creatures are much smaller than what is in the images or divers. It also appears there may be two objects. They certainly warrant further investigation. They are exactly the type of pictures I have been wanting to take for 3 decades. It is rare to see something so clear on the surface. They are vindication for all the people who believe there is something unexplained in Loch Ness. They are remarkable. I have studied them and still do not know what it is. We are lucky the Kellys have decided to go public at last. I have met the Kellys twice and they are absolutely genuine. I persuaded them that these pictures were so important they should make them public. They warrant further investigation. It is not driftwood, it is a moving creature and totally unexplained. The full sequence of 71 images were put together into a video and shared to YouTube by podcast The Cryptid Factor, hosted by Reese Derby, Leon Kirkbeck, and Dan Schreiber.
Okay, let me see if this video. I don't know okay, let me
You
see
may have to
how.
the size of it.
Yeah, first I have to zoom out. So I was zooming in for you. Okay, but let me see how long is the video. Oh, 4 minutes. We can deal with that,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that works for me.
Can you see?
I can.
Okay, cool. Okay. I guess we can comment as we're watching. So far, nothing. I don't like this black square in the lower left corner. It's taking so much space.
Yeah, I think it's trying to
Uh,
stay. the photos, so that way you're not losing any of the photos, because this square seems to be the photo.
Oh yeah, yeah, on the right side. Yeah. I mean, we can see, I'll try moving my mouse. We can see something like visible here. And even before that, we see all this water being moved right here. Okay, this is the next
Mm-hmm.
slide. Okay, so
Yep.
something, if there is something, and it's not mere, I don't know, water currency. So something from here to there is moving. Ooh,
Oh,
this is an
yeah.
eye. That was an eye. Let me just go back. Okay. Yep, this is an eye.
You're right.
Hmm. And again, Loch Ness should not have any cracks or what animal did you mention?
Hippo.
Hippo. Yeah, so it shouldn't have those. Um, this is very interesting. Okay. But do you see the trail, the water trail behind the being? If
Yeah.
this is the head, you see how long, man? This is so many meters or so many yards behind. This is a tall
Mm-hmm.
thing. I mean, a long thing, not tall, long. Ooh, this is interesting.
Man.
Okay, this is more specific, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely looks like a serpentine being, like an animal.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, you can see them better now. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was definitely two things there.
Hmm. And the video is almost over. It has just a little over 1 minute left. Okay, yeah, seems like another eye, but very
Yeah.
hard to tell because whenever you zoom in, you lose the quality of the photo because of that pixelization. Hmm. Man, and this comes from this year. You can see in the lower left corner, it says Kelly 2024. So I'm grateful we managed to see this.
Yeah. But the thing I don't understand is, what did they take the picture with? Was it a did it say it was a Canon camera, or was that the previous story?
I honestly don't remember what she was using to take photos. Oh, this is when they put all the slides together and now it looks like a video clip
Yeah.
made from photos. So cool. Oh my, yeah, you can tell from here to there. It's like it is long. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know why someone would think otter. I would think more. I mean, if I was thinking something other than a monster, like eel, something long like that.
Yes, exactly. It does look like an eel, like a huge and thick one.
Yeah, yeah, it's Jormungandr or something like that.
Yeah. Are you able to see the letters?
The video is being lauded for showing the creature's apparent movement made possible because the still images were taken on a high resolution camera with great metadata and depth of field. Whether you're a
Hmm.
skeptic or a believer, this mysterious video will give you goosebumps and have you debating late into the night over what was captured by Kelly in the loch that day. There will be no doubt, or there will no doubt be those who will assume this is a video using AI or some somehow been tampered with, but we at the Cryptid Factor can attest to them being entirely authentic, Schreiber said. They have not
Hmm.
been photoshopped or falsified in any way. Hopefully, this video will serve as a reminder that there are still mysteries still out there to be solved, and it will ignite the world of amateur sleuths into analyzing this footage and helping us to get to the bottom of what is in it. As mentioned by um, oh, as mentioned by Fetham, otters are a popular skeptical explanation for sightings of a seemingly mysterious creature in the loch, especially given that they are strong swimmers and can quickly disappear under the water for long periods of time while performing dives that are dozens of feet deep. Another skeptical explanation presented for Kelly's photos is that they show a diver, although so far no one has come forward to take credit. Still, plenty of cryptozoological explanations also remain popular. Some believe
Okay,
that the
I'm sorry, just a second, Sean. I mean, even though I'm a skeptic by nature, I mean, come on. What we saw is no otter and no diver. I mean, come on. Like, I'm not saying it is the Loch Ness monster, but you can see that it's a serpentine type of an animal, right?
yeah, I mean either this is well, no, it really can't be because I was thinking either this is a creature that is very long or it is moving very fast and leaving a wake, but a wake the you have it creates the what am I trying to say? Not rings, but the wake moves away from the object, and this was all trailing directly behind. So this was where this object was breaking the surface of the water. So you have to have something that's very, very long.
Hmm. Yeah.
Some believe that the sightings of strange moving objects in Loch Ness are indicative of a surviving population of plesiosaurs, although others argue that more recent scientific study makes makes that possibility unlikely. Plesiosaurs, aquatic reptiles who first appeared in the fossil record around 200 million years ago, and were thought to have died off 66 million years ago, the same time as the dinosaurs, are a popular explanation for the monster said to inhabit Scotland's Loch Ness. An explanation first introduced in the 1930s and later popularized by naturalist Sir Peter Scott and zoologist Dennis Tucker. Supporters of the hypothesis point to the long necks of plesiosaurs and postulate that this explains why witnesses sometimes describe seeing a long neck or seeing a neck-like appendage with a small head attached sticking up out of the water. But despite the recent findings that suggest plesiosaurs were adapted to tolerate fresh water and might have even spent their entire lives in it, a research project published to the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology by scientist Paul Schofield shows that plesiosaurs were actually very unlikely to ever lift their heads above water. It is much more likely, according to Schofield, that plesiosaurs use their long necks to dodge the sea floor. They they have these enormous teeth arranged in rows like a grappling iron, he explained. It has been hypothesized that they floated on the surface and dredged the seafloor, blowing the dirt out through their teeth and the leaves through or the leaves I'm sorry, blowing the dirt out through their teeth and leaving just the clams. Thus, their feeding method dictates the neck length. It's just like the giraffe, but in reverse. Oh, I understand. So instead of reaching up, they're reaching down.
Hmm.
Some believers might argue that this only explains why any plesiosaurs inhabiting Loch Ness aren't seen with their heads above water more often, but Schofield dismisses any belief in the monster entirely. I totally reject the idea that Nessie exists and that it is an Elasmosaurus, he said. Loch Ness monster records are a mixture of fakes and mistakes. This wasn't the first time within the past several years that the plesiosaur hypothesis had taken a beating in the court of public opinion. A 2019 study conducted by Neil Gemmell, a New Zealand scientist and professor at the University of Otago, caused quite a stir when it failed to turn up any evidence of plesiosaurs in Loch Ness. Gemmell's study involved gathering water samples from multiple locations and at different depths of the loch to scan for bits of animal DNA, and then working to identify it. The samples were sent to labs in New Zealand, Australia, Denmark, and France, which used large sequence databases to compare the DNA found in Loch Ness with the majority of known living things. This was done to help distinguish and identify any potentially unknown genetic material. The results revealed no evidence of any large animals such as sturgeon, catfish, sharks, or surviving prehistoric plesiosaurs, but they did show an abundance of eel DNA. Interesting. However, it should be noted that the study was not comprehensive and does not represent a definitive catalog of life in Loch Ness. Despite this, many now point to giant eels as a possible explanation for the monster, although as of yet, no proof of their existence in the loch has been found. Now, wait just a minute. Didn't it just say that there was an extensive eel DNA? Maybe giant eels is something different. But I guess I was just thinking of giant as an adjective for the eel, like really big eel, not a separate species. What
Yeah,
do you think?
or maybe if they found the DNA of an eel, maybe I don't know, maybe if the first thing that crossed my mind, maybe they don't expect it to be giant, so they just reject any idea as almost mythological and thus hysterical. Number two, or B, it could be that I'm just guessing. I'm not saying this is what it is, but if they found a DNA of an eel, but it's not 100% an eel, what if through the sample they found, uh, it's something more besides the eel? I don't know. Could it be a species or subspecies of something, or something that shares some of the genetics with eel, but it's its own subspecies or species? So I'm only guessing. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I just that kind of threw me off when it said that it contained an abundance of eel DNA, but then said, "Well, there's no giant eels in the lake." So, uh, yeah.
Mm.
Um, okay. So, despite this, many now point to giant eels as possible explanation, eel, but no proof of their existence in the loch has been found. But cryptozoologist Ken Gerhard has another hypothesis for the Loch Ness monster. Based on thousands of eyewitness descriptions, I'm convinced that Nessie is just one of many such unknown creatures around the globe. Norwegian serpents, champ, uh, ogopogo here in North America, lake monsters in Scandinavia, Russia, Japan, and Argentina, among others, and that these animals represent the very same species, most likely descended from an ancient group of serpentine whales. He told the Rossshire Journal in 2021, although the vast majority of whales are found in saltwater, some whales can occasionally be found in freshwater rivers and lakes looking for food. Supporters of Gerhard's hypothesis might argue that the relative scarcity of credible evidence for a monster in the loch might be because they don't live there full time, but rather only travel there in search of food. And yet, there is currently no proof for the existence of whales in Loch Ness, so the sightings remain unexplained.
Okay, let me go back and I'll turn off, this sharing screen.
Yeah,
Um, I want to say that, I mean, let's be honest, that thing was not a whale,
it was not.
right? So I'm very open to the idea that it's a huge eel because it does look like an eel, or like we said, serpent, because a serpent and an eel, they look very similar. Who knows,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they can even be grouped under the same umbrella, maybe just like similar like horses and zebras. I'm just giving an explanation, just giving just a parallel. So I don't know if the legend of the Loch Ness monster is true, but that creature we just saw, the
Hmm.
animal, that seems very true. I don't know what the species is. It doesn't seem that, it does seem big and fast, but it doesn't seem of some mythological proportions like the mythological kraken or something like
Right.
that. So I think this is believable that what we are seeing is not a cryptid, it's not a some fairy tale. I think that that serpentine creature looks very real.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's I was thinking about. I know in Russia, there's a story of a whale that inhabits a certain, or not a whale, a monster that inhabits a certain lake, and it said like it in the story like it killed off an entire group of people like in one bite. And so yeah, you have these mythological proportions for these giant creatures, but maybe it is like a serpentine whale. I had never heard of a serpentine whale before, so I kind of looked it up, and yeah, it just looks like a really long-bodied whale. Uh, and apparently they have fossil evidence that it did exist at some point. So that's
Mm.
interesting. So
You have a question which we didn't see. It came an hour and a half ago. Do you want me to read
oh,
it for you?
sure, yeah, go ahead.
Or I can post it here. Can you see it?
Yes. All right. Shaun, do you remember the pterodactyl looking flying thing that flew up from under the bridge on the country road? I remember being so scared when I saw it while I was driving alone. I was very happy when you and your father saw it. I thought maybe I had imagined it. So I don't remember that. I do remember there
How
being.
come you don't remember? This would be a cool addition to the story, Sean. Come on.
I don't. I don't remember the pterodactyl thing. I do remember um, thinking, or maybe dad saying that there was like a crane or something by the bridge. I remember the bridge. I know the bridge you're talking about, but I don't remember seeing the pterodactyl thing. But that would be cool. I was real young though. I think we left that area when I was like 10.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why you don't remember because this was a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was more than 20 years ago. So yeah,
Mm.
and at that time, seeing a pterodactyl for a kid, not understanding pterodactyls aren't supposed to be there anymore, probably wouldn't have been that big of a shock.
Even though if it's as big as your car, you're like, okay, just another animal.
I mean, Pokemon was on TV. They had monsters as big as cars all the time.
Oh yeah, they had that like cartoon TV series, Dinosaurs Before Time or Dinos Before Time, some Land Before Time, right? The Land Before Time. So maybe you're like,
Yep,
oh, you're seeing dinosaurs on TV, dinosaurs in person. You like a kid believing in Santa Claus. You're like you expect to see them because that's why Jesus says you're supposed to be like kids, have this faith that is so easy to be produced in your heart.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Um, for those who didn't notice, Sean and I matching tonight in our t-shirts, and I don't know if you guys can see right here, and in our caps. So whenever we do an episode, we'll try to wear something like that. Not necessarily this color, but we'll try to match so we can it can be more like a theme for this segment of the channel, which I think it's cool. Um, Sean, thank you so much for finding time, for myself and for the audience. Um, I was enjoying these couple of hours, especially the first story when we were laughing. I hope no one will think that we were not being serious, but that honestly we're just enjoying while we are speculating, guessing, analyzing, discerning. We're just trying not just to be, some biblical fundamentalist and saying it's either this way or that way, but we're also trying to enjoy these things because the podcast, we I make no money. It's a sacrifice for all my guests, including you, Sean. You're more than a guest. You're now like a co-host of this segment. So I hope no one will be upset that sometimes we are too free to express ourselves because we truly want to enjoy this and show like, hey, even though we're running this, we're just regular nerds and believers like the rest of you guys. So it's like there's nothing to hide and there's nothing to try to portray ourselves as we are something or someone else. We are not, and we are glad and happy in our skin and who God made us to be. That being said, I would just invite everyone watching directly live or in the future, please subscribe, like, share this material if you find it useful in any way. Not just this video for tonight, because some people may find it silly that someone is in the 21st century believing in, all these creatures and cryptids. But if you find anything that we cover on the channel, be it systematic theology, biblical theology, historical theology, archaeology, different eyewitness reports, apologetic material comparing Jesus and Yahweh with other gods, showing Jesus' supremacy. If you find anything of that educational and helpful, please share it with your church, with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers. It doesn't cost anything again. And every click, every subscribe, every kind comment will help us get there. Shaun, the floor is yours. You can take time for the concluding thoughts. Whatever is on your heart, you can share beat when it comes to cryptids or anything else.
Yeah, cryptids may seem like a stretch for some people, and maybe it is. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to invalidate the experiences of these people who are reporting these things. We believe that these people really did experience something, and there's nothing that somebody would experience that we would just immediately dismiss as saying, no, that could never happen. I mean, because we believe that a man died and rose 3 days later, and that man holds the whole world in his hands. He created the entire world, and he sustains it by the power of his word. So we, as Christians, we start off believing something that's pretty unbelievable for most people. And our God, that man who died for our sins, he can do whatever he wants to do. So just because it's not part of your normal experience doesn't mean it's not part of the world he created. So there's a lot of things that are out there or that could be out there that maybe you haven't experienced. I've never seen a lion in person, but they're out there. I've never seen a zebra up close, but they're out there. So just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean somebody else hasn't experienced it. So
And you never
we should be
seen a
grateful.
Serb in person except on video or internet, but Serbs exist, right?
Serbs do exist. I've heard that they're very smart people. But yeah, no, and we definitely want to thank the Fortean or the Singular Fortean Society for letting us use their content. This is great, and we appreciate their content and how thoroughly they vet everything.
Yeah, I actually covered one of their books with the author Tobias. Um, we were talking about so many different instances, including well, it was mostly about Mothman sightings in Chicagoland, and that book has tons of material. It's not expensive. I believe it was like 15, 16 bucks, something like that. With nowadays inflation, it's not really much. So, why not even supporting someone? They don't have to be Christian. They don't have to be people of same spiritual beliefs, but their work is honest. Their work is good and detailed. Just as all these stories we read, you can imagine yourself reading a novel or watching the news. As many details they could have gotten, they did implement. So in that way, just support Tobias and this, the website and the organization. That being said, we shall see you next week. I don't know if it will be Friday again or Sunday, depending on when my guest responds. And if he's not able to come, then I'll have to keep looking for someone else. God bless you. Go and serve your king. Remember, even when you fall down, get up. God is not the one judging you and pointing fingers at you. And also remember that this cosmos is way more supernatural, complex, and has so many more layers than you're told by your parents, teachers, including pastors. And this is not going to some conspiracies, just saying like, look, we're just regular guys. We don't experience much supernatural, but reading and touching on all these supernatural stories makes us wonder and say, hey, God, the this cosmos, this universe you made is way more beautiful, way more mystical, mysterious and majestic than we think you are. And that points to an even more beautiful and majestic creator who deserves to get the glory, because he is even way above all these beings that we marvel, like, how is it possible? How do they do this? Where do they live? How do they feed off? Where do we find them or don't find them? How do we defend ourselves from them? And on the top of everything, there is God who beholds the whole universe just with his breath, with his word, with logos. Okay, guys, God bless you, and I will see you next weekend. Bye-bye.